You do that on fireworks. You do that for fireworks.
We're live.
Okey doke. Okay, this is a Barberton City Council meeting. Today is July 12th, 2021. Tonight is a regular legislative meeting. Before that, we will go into our committee meetings. We have 5 committee meetings tonight, and we are going to start off with City Properties, Parks and Recreation with Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Properties, Parks and Recreation. Today is July 12th, 2021. It is 6 p.m. All members of the committee are present. Guests noted. We have no new requests for legislation, no pending legislation. For miscellaneous discussion, I'll open it up to the committee first. Mr. Jaber, Councilor Coburn.
Just wondered how the parks were faring with all the water.
I know Everly Webb is dry. I have not gotten to see the other ones. Councilor Jaber, have you seen any of them?
Nothing in your ward?
We had
No.
some localized flooding near Newton, but that's all I know of in my area.
We had 2 residents from Crispin Park said they had some water coming from their basement, but the city guys were out there yesterday taking care of that. They both took care of that, so.
Beautiful. Anything from the body? Director, do you have anything?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay.
Anything new with the skate park, any information?
I don't see Director Tracy or the mayor, but I will follow up with them as soon as I see them, and tomorrow morning I will let you know there.
I appreciate it, thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm. Anything from the gallery? Well, hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that, sir.
Thank you. We are adjourned at 6:04.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Public Welfare and Safety with Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to bring to order the Public Welfare and Safety Committee meeting. It's Monday, July 12th, 2021, here in council chambers. All members of the committee are present, and Mr. Griffin, it's good to see you back.
Thank you.
We missed you.
Good to be back.
Thank you. And all other council members are present with the exception of Mrs. Fry, and all others noted. We have one late request for legislation. It's a letter from Mayor Judge requesting legislation to enter into an agreement with Southwest Summit Council of Governments, or SwissCog, the City of Norton, and Copley Township for the lease purchase of information technology equipment for SwissCog operations. Emergency wording and first reading passage is being requested. I'm going to let Mrs. Miller kind of give us the lowdown on this piece of legislation. And we do have a special safety committee meeting scheduled next week. So if we don't want to call for it out of committee tonight, we can call for it next week and then for passage the following week if everyone's in agreement. So, Mrs. Miller, would you like to take it away?
Sure, thank you. First, I would just like to thank all the department heads and council and Clerk Price for just we've really worked hard to have no late legislation. I think to July 12th or 13th, so this is only our 3rd one. So everyone's been really working hard together to stop, that from happening. So I'm very happy with that. But this one was a request, and I absolutely think it's a very important piece of legislation for this reason. Our IT folks had ordered this I'm gonna use the word servers, it's probably not a server, but those are I only know server and laptop, so it's not a laptop. So, he ordered this, about, I wanna say almost 6 months ago, because of the backup of ordering and equipment, and it's hard to get. He felt it was very important to get it quickly. In doing so, it ended up getting delivered to Copley, because Copley does the finance for Swisscog. Copley did not want to take on that financial obligation on their own, with reimbursement from the other two entities, because those three entities are the only ones that use that. And so Norton graciously came forward and said that they would do that for us, and then we would enter an agreement to just pay Norton. So it's not a greater payment than we would have had to begin with. It's exactly the same. It's just we're paying Norton back instead of Copley. But this equipment needs to get up and running, and it's very important, and it just kind of, everyone had the right motives through the whole thing. It just kind of got done not exactly how it should have been.
You may not know, but any idea how much our portion is? I know, I don't.
I definitely read the contract. I just definitely don't
I want to
remember.
say it's over the course of 5 years. I think it amounts to around 72,000.
Over the course of 5
I
years?
was gonna say 70,000 over 5, but I didn't.
Okay. Okay. Does anyone have any questions at this moment about, yes?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Ms. Miller for the explanation on that. I would like to wait until that special safety committee next week. The mayor's requested it late in an email and said that he was okay with it going July 19th for a special safety committee meeting. The fact that we don't have that contract in front of us, but other than just the ordinance for Norton, I think it would just be best just to wait, you know.
The contract that you will have is the contract with Norton, so, yeah.
It says, it alludes to it as Exhibit A, the agreement, that we would pay 33.3% annual costs for it, but there's no cost on this, so just, if
So I
it'd be
think,
okay just to wait until next special.
We got just the City of Norton's ordinance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we don't
There
have
is an
action.
agreement, and it's just exactly what Jeremy said.
Right.
But I'm not sure I have possession of that, but perhaps the mayor's office does.
Okay. Okay.
Or it might even be the police department. I'm not sure.
I mean, regardless of if we take it out of committee tonight or tomorrow or next Monday for a special
It was-
meeting, it would still be voted on in the same week. So I'm comfortable with that as well. Mr. Griffin, how about you?
I feel the same way. We can
feel the
wait
same way?
another week.
Okay. So we will, in our special safety meeting next Monday, we will, if anyone has any questions throughout the week, I'm sure Mrs. Miller or the mayor would be happy to answer what they can. And we will pull that out of committee next Monday. We also have, tonight we have pending legislation. It's a resolution 90-2021. It's titled Commendation Lieutenant Michael Beckman. A resolution of the Council of the City of Barberton to honor and give public recognition to Lieutenant Michael Beckman for receiving professional credentialing through the Center for Public Safety Excellence as a fire officer. Does anyone have any questions about this piece of legislation? Okay. Does anyone have any miscellaneous discussion for safety?
Oh, not
Oh.
50, sorry.
Yes.
Any updates on the skill game shops from the emails from the chief or?
So I reached out, as I indicated I would last Tuesday. I reached out to the chief and Lieutenant White just to inquire as to whether or not the skilled game shops were keeping their hours and that they were supposed to be, because I believe they were in violation when we discussed it last time. And what kind of complaints they've had, if they'd had a lot of calls there. And so they emailed me back that there were no complaints about them not operating within the parameters of the current ordinance, and someone's tires were slashed. I think, I don't have the email pulled up, but someone's tires were slashed. I think it was a vehicle that was parked overnight, and I think a warrant was served there. But I think that pretty much sums up the information that they had over the last 6 months. Well, February, March, April, May, June. Yeah, 5 months since we talked about it. So,
Thanks, Chair. I did follow up with that email to request that planning provide or feedback about where we should go, because there was concern with the updating of the planning portion and hours and stuff like that. So I did reach out using that information that Mrs. DeBevick got back from the Barberton PD, forwarded that to planning to get their input on moving forward with that legislation that for increasing the fees, as well as feedback about possible hour changes for that.
and I believe I have also touched base with Justin, and we said that over August break, we were going to work on getting, something put together for that. Yes.
I thought that was the public safety. I believe that the hours and the amount and the hours and that whole ordinance, I believe it says Department of Public Safety.
It does. It does.
And that would be like the hours, if you want to change hours or increase the fees of the machines.
Right.
That part's public safety.
Right. Absolutely. I think, though, last time we discussed it, there was some conversation, if I'm correct, from Mr. Hunt regarding, I don't know.
There could be some, that was shortly after the moratorium was put into place, and that they were worried about possibly conflicting with some stuff that they might want to change in the future. Actually, I believe it was some council members that brought that up. And it was just a question, just inquiring about it. So that's why I did move forward with an email of getting their input on the matter, because it has been 5 months.
Mr. Hunt.
Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I want to coordinate a meeting with through the planning committee to start looking into this. On Wednesday, the city, the big thing is that several of these uses that were identified, we as a city wanted to approach it holistically. So paramount to that is updating our development code. So we don't necessarily want a Band-Aid approach to this. And I know the development code rewrite isn't going to be done by December 1st. I'm just telling everyone that now. There's been some hiccups along the way, but we're working wholeheartedly at getting that accomplished. But one being is, I think I reached out to Nina earlier today, hoping that we can bring together a committee. When we start interviewing consultants for the development code rewrite, it's already explicitly stated in the RFQ that we put out that there will be some sort of a study of this particular use along with several other uses. Not only this use, but a lot of other uses that are kind of pertinent to land use discussion. So specifically when we're interviewing potential consultants who work with communities not only throughout Ohio, but through the United States, this is going to be a question that we're going to specifically target. So we've done a little bit of preliminary research, what other communities are doing in Summit County, what other communities are doing in Northeast Ohio. There may be other best practices out there. And, it's something that, like I said, Wednesday we'll get a list of folks that are going to respond to this RFQ, professional consultants that deal with this day in and day out, and I feel like that is a good starting point to start to look at these in a little bit more in depth. We might have a temporary Band-Aid approach, but the ideal is holistically the development code will address this when it's updated, and we'll have the best laws in place through that updated development code. So,
Mr. Hunt, if I may. So if they are already here and we change the development code, we can't ask them to leave if we ban skilled game shops, correct? Or am I incorrect?
all uses that are here today, as long as they have a certificate of occupancy, will be grandfathered in under the new development.
That's
And
what,
that's something that we'll talk about, how businesses, how residents, how people are assured that they can continue as is. So that's paramount to any update to the development code.
okay. I just want to, I guess what I believe is some of the things that we asked of at least the one owner that I believe he came on and spoke virtually when we were meeting virtually, was we wanted to see no trouble, no, making sure that he was abiding by the current ordinance, because we didn't have evidence that that was happening. So, I mean, if the building, I would like to revisit this possible increase in fees. I mean, it's an increase in general fund money. They won't leave. They don't have to leave, I should say, if the development code changes. So if we can collect more money from them, I don't know why we would hold off past another 6 month. I mean, we've already missed the 6 month deadline now, but in 6 months, then we collect again. Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick, I believe when we first started looking into this, that some of the administration found out we're supposed to have a committee that, of the police chief and the safety, Beth and a few other people. And I don't think that we should change anything until we have all of our information together. And if that's supposed to be a commission that's making those decisions, is that correct?
Yes, but I continue with what you're saying.
I just think we should not jump into something just because we told him 6 months. I'm saying,
All I said that is that we were going to discuss it over the month of August.
When
Yes.
when is the next payment due?
I think the payment
It already passed.
would have
Is
just
the
happened,
next one
so.
in December or January?
December, end of December, 6 months. Now, here's another question. We have like 4 or 5 bars, local bars that have 4 or 5 in their establishments. Do we get fees from those guys too, or no?
No.
No.
I don't
Those
think it's
are-
the same kind of gaming. I'd have to check, but I don't think it's the same thing. There
Got it.
might be some that are the same, like the Keno, but I don't believe it's all the same.
I'm pretty sure it's the same skill games.
I believe it's,
Well,
I believe if it's regulated by the state of Ohio, it's excluded from our skill game, the resolution or ordinance. So Keno is run by the state. So
No,
that-
Keno's right, that's lottery, but there's also skill games in,
Well, I think it limits, so I think, I'd have to go back and check, but I think it says if you have X number of games, you're okay, you're not part of the skill game, even
Okay.
if you're over certain.
Yeah.
So-
I would certainly hope there are not skilled games in bars because they're not allowed to be there.
right.
So if you'd like to give us the names of where those are, I'm happy to hear.
Yeah, so we can check it out.
I'm sorry, I can't see you. Yes.
I would just like to state that I agree that there should be discussion. Director Trevor Hunt sent me an email today asking to come up with a date where we can all get together in response to the email from Councilman Greer. I don't recall, and it's irrelevant to me, who had suggested the expanded hours, and I don't know that it was in exchange for a higher fee. I would never disagree with a higher fee. I do, as the safety director, disagree with expanded hours. And maybe I'm just not educated on this form of what some feel is entertainment, and I don't find it to be entertainment for some of our vulnerable population. And that is my objection. And again, I don't mind a fee hike if it's been so many years since we've done so. It might be time for that. Expanded hours, I don't see the need for that, but that will be part of our discussion, I'm sure. I just wanted to get that out there.
So is there indeed a committee then that is supposed to be?
Yes, I have to look up the ordinance, but there is. It might even be in the charter as well, but I'll look in the ordinance.
I looked through the charter today and I didn't notice it, but that doesn't mean that it's not in there, so it's probably in the ordinance.
You know, there's a boxing commission, there's a parking commission, there's all
Right.
kinds of commissions that are virtually non-existent. But yes, I think there is in the ordinances committee that has been, with named positions.
Okay. Okay, so can we collectively schedule an appointment sometime in August then? Or a meeting just to discuss?
Well, I
Or-
got, if you'd allow myself and the chiefs to get, or Chief Morber or his designee to get with Trevor to first find out when we could meet.
Absolutely, that would be
They'll
great.
let you know.
That would be,
Or Trevor can let you know.
that would be great. Is that good for you? Do you have?
Yeah, absolutely. That was what my email was suggesting. I did want to mention that the moratorium went into effect November 30th of 2020, and it is now, why are we just now forming a committee to look at, I know this ain't planning, but what do we, I know people are busy, but it's been half a year and a committee hasn't been formed. This committee should have already been formed. And this should have, I'm just a little disappointed in hearing that we're finally moving on this moratorium now. But anyways, yeah, I'm absolutely fine with
The
with
committee
meeting.
is not the moratorium committee. That's just the skilled,
Correct, yeah, I understand that. However, there's a moratorium that was mentioned during the last legislation request, and it was cited, and now we're just now hearing that they're moving forward, and it's been 5 months. The moratorium was only for a year, and, yeah, but absolutely, Council, I'm definitely, would like to meet with planning to move forward
So
with
we'll-
legislation, at least for the fees. The hours are debatable, and that's why I reached out to planning to get their input.
Mr. Heide?
Thank you, Chair. Given the time frame from when it was first, the moratorium and all that was first talked about, and when we had a presenter here, I didn't see this is just me, I'm not on this committee or anything, but I didn't see the need to form any committees or commissions, because if they acted up in that 6 months, then everybody would have been wasting their time meeting. If they would have been violating the rules that were already in place, then that committee would have met one day and just said, hey, they've got all these violations. They've now gone 6 months with showing that they can actually work within the parameters. So I think right now would be a good time to discuss it. But anything in the past 6 months would have been, we say, okay, they have been doing fine, and all of a sudden we start to move on something, and next thing you know, they're open till 2 a.m. So there's 6 months of good behavior, so to speak, is the time has elapsed on that, and now would be a good time to speak on that.
Correct, yeah, my disappointment just comes from finding out that we're just now moving. The moratorium ends November 30th if the legislation is right, correct? It's not December 31st.
No, it's November 30th.
Yeah, it's November 30th.
Yes.
Thank you. I think what Mr. Hunt's trying to say, and what we're maybe it's just me jumping through this. If it's changed now, we have professional consultants that's going to come in and rewrite the development code, and chances are it could be changed again. So it's like, let's jump on this right away and then see what the consultants say. I just think that it's a lot of extra work, and we have to, the development code, we can all agree on that, I'm sure, that needs to be rewritten. It needs to be done professionally. We need to look at each word, each aspect of that. And, if you jump into this, and it could come down, it might take a year to get that, it might take 6 months, but then we would have to change it again. So you'd have to go back and change it because the ordinance doesn't agree with what the development code is. So I know it's been talked about, and you might lose some patience on that, but it's coming, and I have the faith in a new development code is going to be good for the city, and it'll be something that we can all understand, and we can teach each other and the businesses with that. So I just think, if you change something now, 6 months later, you have to change it again.
Yes.
Thank you. Director Hunt, if this is, when the development code's rewritten, is it possible that instead of doing something by ordinance, that we can come to agreements on terms that we could hand to you to give to the consultants and say, this is what we would like added?
I think we certainly welcome any comment. In fact, we'll we go throughout the development process. There'll probably be touch points where there's a lot of interaction, whether it's general community meetings or actually presenting to council itself, but, yeah, we welcome that.
Yeah, I just want to, that's one of the things that we will have meetings, public meetings, so people can, give their 2 cents, and it'll come to council, and the consultant will be open with everything, and then that'll be a good time that everybody can talk their piece and see what's best for the city.
Well, I think with something like this, with the skilled games ordinance, that I don't want to see another item in the city that's governed by 4 or 5 different ordinances, that if we could come to terms on something that we all agree on, instead of passing one ordinance, pass it along to the planning department so that that department can give the consultants and say, this is what the council has agreed on that they would like to see in it, so that we don't have to come back and keep revisiting things over and over again. Instead of, like I said, piecemealing this ordinance. Well, now they may have been past that section, so now they have to go back and rewrite, and we have to rewrite another ordinance. So if we're gonna rewrite the codes, then we have one nice shot right now to say what we want in it, come to terms within ourselves, and hand it over to the planning department, tell them, add this, so that when the rewrite comes to us, it's already in there, instead of having to do 100 ordinances. Just my thought process. Thank you.
Mine too.
Mr. Devitt?
Yes.
We're still 4 or 5 years behind. Norton changed theirs 4 or 5 years ago. This should have been done a while back. We've lost over $40,000, $50,000 a year waiting for this. So you should definitely move forward with this.
So what I'm going to suggest is that Mrs. Doherty is going to arrange a schedule to meet, for her to meet with the chiefs and Mr. Hunt, and then she will email me, and then sometime later in August, if Mr. Greer and I can be involved, that would be great.
Well,
And Mrs. Angeloff, because she's chair of planning.
yeah, Mr. Hunt is the one that sent me the email about us getting together.
Okay.
He's spearheading. I will make sure that you get notified.
Okay.
And,
Okay, well then
Trevor has a lot on his plate, we all do, but I'll make sure you find out what it is. And it would be an informal meeting, not the committee out of the ordinance
Right.
positions, but an informal meeting with the planning director.
Right, that's all
Myself
I'm
and
suggesting,
the,
correct.
Police chief. Now, with all due respect to Mr. Heidick, I would also like to say that the point of hiring the consultants, I believe, as I listened to Mr. Hunt, was to get industry standards, to get the best practices from the knowledge of the consultants, that that's what they do for a living. I understand what you're saying, the thought process that you're going through is that, we already know or think we know, or we can come to an agreement what we would like. But if we're paying this money to consultants that do this for a living, I don't know if it would be prudent to come up with an ordinance and go through that process and then hand it to the consultants. Maybe it is, I don't know, I just wanted to make that comment as well.
Well, I'm saying we
No
don't need an ordinance.
Yeah.
I'm saying we need to, I'm willing to bet that these consultants aren't from Barberton, whichever ones we go through. They're not elected by the people like we in the administration are. We have more of a hand on the pulse of our city. I respect what they do, but when it comes to certain parts of the codes, like skilled gaming, I think we, as a 9 square mile city, all of us in this room have a better handle on it than somebody from the outside. And I'm saying we shouldn't pass ordinances. I'm saying we should come to terms with what we feel Barberton is best for Barberton and hand it over for them. I'm not saying put the entire code under a microscope ourselves, but certain things like this, Barberton's going to be a hell of a lot different than Akron, than Strongsville, than Dayton, than Toledo, than Steubenville. And I think that's something that the consultants need to see and recognize, that on certain topics, we have a better thought process than they do, so to speak. Not like we're better than them, but we have more feet on the ground. So that was just, again, how I looked at it.
Okay, so moving forward, I'm going to wait to hear from Mr. Hunt or Mrs. Doherty regarding when they are going to meet, and then Mr. Greer and I and Mrs. Angeloff can set up a time to meet afterwards. Is that good? Okay. Does anyone else have anything for safety? Hearing nothing, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Griffin. Do I have a second? I guess I will second it.
I'll second, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I was writing my notes.
We are adjourned at 6:30.
Okay. Next up is Rules, Marketing, and Development with,
Mr. Griffin.
I'm waiting, okay, Mr. Griffin.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. I would like the Rules, Marketing, and Development, I'd like to call this meeting to order today, July 12th. We are meeting in council chambers. All members are present and all others noted. Tonight, we have no requests for legislation. But we do have some rule changes to be voted on this evening. It'll be voted on later. Do we have anything, any miscellaneous discussion from the body or from the committee? No. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick.
I'll second that, sir.
Jaybird, we are adjourned at 6:30.
Oh, I'll get it. I was gonna say, I'm not. I'm just looking at my agenda.
Okay.
Your turn.
Okay, next up is City Utilities with Mrs. Colbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to call City Utilities to order. It's Monday, July 12th, 2021. Carol Fry is not here. All other members are present, along with other council members and those in the audience noted. We have no new requests for legislation. We do have two pending legislation ordinances. One is the third reading to enter into contract CT Consultants WWTP Phase 3 and 3C. Did everyone get a clear understanding of that last week? And okay. The second ordinance is Ordinance 91, 2021. Enter into contract Vermeer, the ordinance authorizing the city of Barberton to enter into agreement with Vermeer, the lowest and/or best bidder, in the amount of $71,690 for the purchase of an excavator and declaring an emergency. Did we get our information? Everyone get what you needed? Mr. Greer, did you get what you needed on that?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any miscellaneous discussion for utilities? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I do have a, kind of like clearing the air. I had mentioned last week at the meeting that only 3.6% of this project was completed. And Mr. Tracy then, with the printout, he agreed with me there. And then, without mentioning any names, Mrs. Cdbg said that she did not. I said, well, 50% or half of the work was not done. And he said, no, 3.6. And then she said that she didn't say that. And in the minutes of the regular meeting here on June 28th, you said that you'd be voting no on suspension as well as no on the ordinance because half of the work has already been done. So I just kind of wanted to clear the air because with that comment, it sounded as though that I kind of made this up, and I was getting some telephone calls and they were, wondering what was going on. So I just wanted to, I wasn't making it up, and it's in the minutes. So-
Well, just for clarification, I said, if I did say it, I didn't mean that. So I wasn't positive if I said that, so, but I also clarified with Mr. Tracy after the meeting last week. I completely understand. It doesn't matter if none of the work, if 1% of the work is done. The fact of the matter is our charter requires council approval to enter into contract. And we didn't have council approval. They didn't have council approval. So to allow them to do 1% of the work, in my opinion, goes against the charter. That's the point.
And the point was made by Mr. Weaver that this project is 5 years old, and it was just an honest mistake. It wasn't done intentionally. It wasn't done to cheat the city or anything of that sort. It was an error, and he pleaded with us, and he explained that to us, and then Mr. Tracy did that in his letter to us. And I just think that we've all made mistakes. This is a mistake. Mr. Weaver, the man that he is, and I've known him for 40 years, and saw that error, and that was the first thing that he did. Went to Mr. Tracy, we have to get this ordinance, we have to get this fixed. He wasn't just shoving it under anything, wasn't hiding anything, and I know what our charter says. But sometimes you have to look at the person itself, the morals of the whole thing. He made a mistake, and I'm sure we've all made mistakes. I know I make one at least a day, if not 3 or 4 times a day. And I think that was the point that I was making. He found that error and he corrected it, and he brought it to council.
Thank you. Mr. Heidick?
Thank you, sir. I think Director Tracy may have been onto something that, in a project this big, there's going to be hiccups every now and then. And the fact that, I think he said roughly 13,000 of work
Right.
was done.
Yes.
If that's the case, then to be compliant, and Director Miller, I don't know if it was possible, he said he would, in the future, possibly be able to book that under professional services with the remainder of the contract brought to us. I don't know if that would be able
Not
to
if
be
it was
done.
bid that way.
Okay.
He was saying possibly.
That's what
It
he
was
said.
just possibly if we were having a problem passing this, that possibly that could. He didn't say for
If-
sure. He
Well,
said
here's
he would
what-
have to
here-
talk
here,
to you.
Just sitting here.
Mm-hmm.
There was an error.
Yeah.
He brought it into correct. I don't think the rewriting of the bid process needs to happen because one
Right.
time someone made an error. However, that's part of when you make an error, and the error is just like I have to come and ask for the,
Swisscom.
deductible ordinance because I didn't do it right.
Oh.
I mean, that's just what happens. I mean, so, and I expect all of you to ask me a question, and I will answer it. So,
And
it's
that's
what
what we did.
happens. So, no one really likes to make a mistake in front of God and everyone, but we do, and when we do, we have to answer the questions, so.
So we would be permissible to go ahead and pass this?
Well, you absolutely have to pass it if you're
Right.
gonna enter into the contract. I guess all I'm saying is, I don't think there's a reason to
Rewrite it.
do the way
Exactly.
utilities have been doing bid documents, they've been doing them forever. Just because this one time something different happened.
Thank you. Yes, sir, Mr. Jaber.
I honestly should have brought popcorn instead of Reese's Pieces for this. I feel like you were stabbing her you were going after her for a reason.
No, I wasn't. I
Going
was
on?
just clearing the error because
Yeah.
it made it sound as though I was falsely saying that she said that.
You could have done that through an
And-
email. I feel like you were just taking a little jab at her for some reason.
No, because
You sure?
I'm positive.
I felt
I'm
like it. I
positive.
mean, from an outside
I didn't
point of view,
even,
it seemed like it
if you
was.
remember last week, I didn't even mention her name.
Yeah.
I did not mention her name.
You just did just now.
I did not mention her name last week.
Right.
It's okay. It's fine. If I
not-
said it, I
It's
said
just-
it.
I
It
just
is-
wanted to
it
clear
is
the
what
error
it is.
because,
I just think
I've
you're
had,
doing
I
a
don't
Okay,
want
this,
people to say that
you're all out of
I.
order. This is
Mr.
my
President,
meeting.
Mr. President, point of order. Thank you.
Yes.
May I speak?
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to note that I absolutely value Mr. Weaver and it had nothing to do with that. It failed on suspension. It did not fail
Right.
on, so we weren't suspending the rules. It was a mistake. We weren't suspending my rules. My plan this evening was to vote yes, because I understand that mistakes happen. Absolutely understand that. But I also think as council members, we need to be cognizant of the fact that in 2020, we spent over $2.8 million in non-bid professional services. And I think that we have to figure out a way to reduce that amount that we're spending. So my intention was never to vote no on the piece of legislation. That was not my intention. I completely understand the legislation and the need for it. I absolutely understand that. My intention was to vote no on suspension and make it go 3 readings. And I honestly had no idea that anyone would vote no with me. I really thought that it would just pass and that would be it. So that is the entire motive of mine. That's it, was just that I wanted it to go 3 readings. And I did, in both utilities meetings, mention my concern about it.
Yes.
So, I mean,
Thank you.
that's all I have.
Okay. Do we have any other miscellaneous discussion for utilities? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mrs. DeBevick, and I'll have to second unless Carol does it with osmosis. We are adjourned at 6:45.
6:40. Every clock is wrong.
Okay, next up is Finance and Personnel, and Mrs. Fry's not here, so Mrs. DeBevick will be handling this meeting. She'll be the chairperson.
Oh, thanks. Thank you, Mr. President. You're going to have to give me a minute because I was not aware that I was chair this evening of Finance until a minute before we started meetings. I'm just looking for my agenda. Thanks, dear. I'm hoping that, Mr. President, I'm hoping that when the chairperson isn't going to be there, if they can email and let us know, because this is the second week in a row that I'm not prepared to run a finance committee meeting because I wasn't aware that I was in charge of it.
I thought there was an email. Was there an email from her? saying
I
she wasn't gonna be
didn't
here?
receive
That's
it.
how I got the slip. She said that whatever was on the slip, and I printed the slip out and gave it to everybody.
All right.
Gave it to you. She
Yeah,
said that
this-
maybe it didn't know.
This came up.
Was that in the mailbox last week?
I don't have that paper.
I don't have that either.
No.
Friday?
Yeah, no, I don't have that paper. And I didn't have it last week either.
I don't have it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, moving forward. It's just
Okay,
nice
it was
to
in the
know that-
mailbox last Friday.
Yeah, it
Yeah, this
wasn't,
was
it wasn't
last
in mine.
Friday. Not,
Oh,
this says June 8th.
yeah. I didn't see that, so.
I didn't get one from finance. I didn't get one last week or this week.
Okay.
Mouse ate it.
I would like to bring to order the Finance and Personnel Committee meeting. It's Monday, July 12th, 2021, and it is 6:45 here in council chambers. All members of the committee are present, as well as, with the exception of Mrs. Fry, and all other council members are present and all others noted. We have one request for legislation. It is a letter from Chief Persley requesting legislation approving payment of $64,000 to the Summit County Fiscal Office for the City of Barberton radio access fees for 2021. Emergency wording requested. Chief, this is for all the departments, correct?
It is, and if I can speak for just a moment.
Absolutely.
I believe there was an error made on my part, and I was put two pieces of legislation through. I'm not 100% that what you have before you is accurate, but I pull that until I can confirm those numbers.
So absolutely, because we can, well, you can just kind of just tell us the details, and we can have, that next Monday evening, we have finance as well, and we can call for it then.
Right.
So absolutely.
The original request was for $64,000 that council passed earlier in the year. This would be the second half, which should only be around 34. That's why I want to confirm. I found out when talking with Laura a little while ago, so if I could.
No problem. We'll
follow up
just,
with you next week on
yep,
that.
we'll just keep that on the matters requested, as requested legislation, and we can call for it out of committee next weekend.
Okay.
Or, I mean, next week.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. Okay. We do have a pending piece of legislation that we will be voting on this evening. It is ordinance number 89, 2021, and it's appropriation CARES Act. It's an ordinance appropriating $899.97 from the unappropriated item of the local coronavirus relief fund to the operation and maintenance budget of the local coronavirus relief fund and declaring an emergency. And as Mr. Flaker indicated multiple times, this is so that he can close out the CARES Act fund, and it is reallocation or it's for PPE from the fire department or some supplies that qualified for CARES Act funding. And that is the last of the CARES Act money, correct? Does anyone have any questions about this piece of legislation? Okay. Does anyone, Mr. Yeah, I know. I'm not certain if I should ask if Mr. Flaker wants to go over this first, or if anyone has any miscellaneous discussion before he goes over the, yes.
I do. Since Mrs. Miller is here, I can address it
I
to her.
I have the question,
Oh.
and I have the questions kind of answered.
Okay. I was just curious to find out
yes.
if it was flooding or
So,
what it was.
Mrs. Miller, would you like to give the details about the $11,000?
Sure, they're from 3 claims. One is the, so just as by way of explanation, whenever we are sued or we have a claim, those are turned into insurance. And you have to do that because they have to have notice. If you don't give insurance companies notice and later it turns into something bigger, they will not cover you because you didn't give them notice. So we turn in every claim to our insurance company. So when we have deductibles, it's typically because they've started work on a claim. So the 3 claims that this ordinance covers is the lawsuit from Todd Clevenger, a lawsuit from a person named James Hall. He sued the court and the judges on an eviction issue. And then we had a claim out of the utilities department where there was I'm going to use these words, these are not the words of the utilities department. The water line went diagonally across an intersection, and they were not aware of that because sometimes we're not aware of issues with tapping in. Is that the right word, Denny, on that one?
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I
it
believe
ran
this
diagonally
was
across the intersection.
A water break.
Yeah.
That backed up into a sewer line.
Yeah.
So it went into the house. So it's unusual.
Right.
It does happen, but, yeah, it was unusual circumstance.
Is that good? I said, just chatted with her for a second, and she didn't have the information handy, but she mentioned a water claim in Clevenger. I didn't know what the third one was.
If it was somebody had broke a tire or a chuck hole or flooding or
No,
something of
we
that sort.
absolutely don't pay those claims.
So I
They're
was just
submitted
curious
to
if you knew what it
insurance,
was.
and then insurance evaluates them.
Okay, thank you. Well, since we're on miscellaneous discussion, does anyone have any other miscellaneous discussion for finance this evening? Yes, sir.
Can I ask Mrs. Miller, or can you talk about it, the person, like the hall, can you talk about the lawsuits or anything like that?
The ones that, on the
Mr. Hall,
claims?
yeah.
Yeah, it was a pro se party, so he represented himself.
Okay.
And he was evicted. I'm not even sure what the topic of the eviction was or where he was evicted from, but he did not like that process. So he sued the judges, the court, the clerk. He sued the judges of the courts of appeal. He sued Judge Giudosio, Judge Carr. And it doesn't matter whether we believe there's any merit to it. I'm required to give notice to our insurance company.
Okay.
So then our insurance company represents us, typically just to file a motion to dismiss and get us out of that,
Okay.
which we were.
All right, so there's no settlement or nothing?
There's no settlements on.
Just filed it to,
Right, again, whenever there is a claim, so if
Okay.
someone files a claim because of a water break or, something, obviously, we do have people file claims for potholes and so forth. Every single claim comes to the city, we submit to our insurance company.
Okay.
We pay claims that we are legally liable for, and those claims are paid.
okay.
Anybody else have
Thank you.
any? Yes, go ahead.
So on the third claim, the water claim, how exactly was that paid? Because usually water is not covered, it's groundwater.
Right, again, almost everything is very fact specific. So, I can tell you honestly, in all the years I've been here, I think that might be the first one we've paid. First one, I shouldn't say we've paid, the first one the insurance company has allowed. And, I don't recall any other ones in mine since I've been here for 14 years. So, something specifically about that fact pattern must have been different. And all I can remember about it was a line went diagonally across an intersection. That was something that I remember when we heard of the claim, it seemed unusual to me. Am I right? That's the right one, right, Denny?
It is, but the line that came across was actually a lateral, sewer lateral.
Okay.
And so when the line broke, it backed up into a sewer lateral.
Okay.
So it involved both systems there,
Right.
but it was very unusual that a water main backs up into a house through the sewer.
Right. So that's the twist. That, so he's, in all of his career here, he's not had that happen. That's the twist.
Any other questions? Okay, Mr. Flaker, the floor is yours.
All right. Starting with the health insurance fund for the month of June. The revenues for the month were just over $385,000, expenditures just over $331,000. Puts our net year to date just under $200,000. I do want to point out, there is a typo. If you look in the year to date area where it's revenues and expenditures, you'll see that says balance of May 30th. That should be June 30th. So I just want to point that out. Total revenues for that fund for this year is a little over $2 million. The expenditures for that fund for this year is just over $1.8 million. Going on to the income tax analysis. For the month of June, our estimate was just over $1 million. Our actuals came in just under $1.2 million. So that was a good thing for us this past month. However, our actuals are still under our estimate by about $329,000, which that shrunk from last month. If you recall, last month it was about $500,000 or so in the negative. That has shrunk some. But I do want to point out that if you look at the actuals for 2021 and compare them to the actuals for 2020, you will notice that we are down about $160,000 at the same time last year. So I do want to bring that to the attention of council. I'm going to continue monitoring that throughout this year, and hopefully we can continue seeing good months ahead of us for income tax collection wise, with kind of the economy starting to get hopefully going here shortly, or going because of COVID, and more people getting back to work. Hopefully we can see a little bit of a rebound there this last half of the year. We did transfer
$950,000 to the general fund, $6,250 to street operating, $100,000 to the emergency reserve, and $100,000 to infrastructure improvement reserve. What still needs to be transferred this year, we still need to transfer $4,645,000 to the general fund, $37,500 to street operating, and an additional $400,000 to emergency reserve. Moving on to the statement of cash position, we have a few funds in the negative. The few funds are the same funds that I've mentioned the past few months. The first fund is the FEMA fund. As you all know, that is where the FEMA stormwater mitigation grant that we have for the 14th Street, and that is flowing out of. So once we expend the money, we turn the expenditures into FEMA, they'll reimburse us. We are also paying for the radio system, the Assistance to Firefighters grant, that was paid out of that, but I do know we got reimbursed for that last month, so that's all squared away. So all that is now mostly just the stormwater projects going on in the town. The next fund is the Cdbg Fund. That is the HUD grant. So that, once again, a federal grant program where we have to expend the money for them to return it to us once they approve the expenditures and everything. The next two funds in the negative are on the next page, the health insurance fund. That is only in the negative due to the encumbrance outstanding for the city's healthcare to Summit County. That negative number will continue to go down throughout the year as we do the chargebacks to all the departments as we pay Summit County. And then the last fund in the negative is the internal cost allocation fund. That has to deal with our open POs for our fuel system. So once we pay a fuel bill, we'll charge it back to the departments and get reimbursed for that. So the cash balance for those two accounts are in a positive, so we're good. But however, we are in the negative because of the encumbrances outstanding. The last 3 months of activity, the general fund has stayed roughly the same through the past 3 months, right around $6.4 million. Special revenue funds has went up. You had a big jump from April to May because of the American Rescue Plan money, and then you had a little bit of a jump from May to June because the income tax collections were better in June compared to May. Enterprise funds has stayed right around the same, hovering around the 10 million mark or just under. And then all other funds, as you notice, that negative number keeps getting smaller each month. So when I give this report next month, that should be a positive number. Moving on, comparing June of 2020 to June of 2021, the unencumbered cash balance for the general fund is up. That is due to the CARES Act money from last year. The special revenue funds is up. That's due to the American Rescue Plan money from this year, The enterprise funds is up by about $500,000. All other funds is actually up compared to last year. Last year at this time, we were unencumbered cash balance was negative $333,000. This year, it's a negative $27,000. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Flaker regarding the June budget report? Yes.
Thank you, Chair. How's Rita treating you?
Well,
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? Hearing nothing, do I have a motion to call for the acceptance of the finance report as given by Mr. Flaker?
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Mrs. Angela,
I'll second it.
second by Mr. Medges. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything for finance this evening? Hearing nothing, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion made by Mrs. Angeloff. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Medges. Bless you. We are adjourned at 7 o'clock.
Okay, that ends our committee meetings. We'll take a 2-minute recess, and we'll go right into our legislative meeting.
Yeah, because it's, yeah, I never got one of those slips either, but I'm all fine.
I didn't get a slip.
Yeah, no, she was on vacation this week, last week, I don't know, but this week she's on vacation. Okay, yeah, it's November 30th, because it was a year. Yeah, I don't think they, I know. And I think because of the, yeah. Well, because I think, because of the, because it's so screwed up, and I didn't even know this until last year when I pulled the old ordinance. It's Director of Public Safety when you're looking at hours of operation and the cost of the machines. It's not planning, it's public safety. You know, and I had that whole thing, and I think that they're just looking at the development code, and, you know, I think we're going to probably get, he's got bids out, and then we're going to really push for that. So, but that, I don't know, the operations, the hours of operation,
They might not, that's what I actually.
yeah. I know. Yeah, and then nobody said anything when I said it.
And say, hey, you guys gonna send out
It's just as easy enough for me to send a check as it is to have my accountant have to deal with it. You know what I mean? It's like, I just wanted to ask you, because I didn't see anything from CCA last year. I'm like, that's great, because I'm gonna get hit because
CCA last year, they shut down for like 2 months.
Then got lazy after that.
well, they knew that they weren't getting.
No, they just haven't came back up to the
Really?
No, after, because they shut down in March. They didn't start, I think they're having.
Craig, did they notify you about the cotillions? Okay, good. No, it's back in March.
I mean.
Oh, yeah, yes, okay. No, I thought you were talking about, yeah, the picture, PR picture day. I was just wondering, I just, been meaning to ask you that, and.
Yeah, they did.
Because I was thinking, did they ask me to do that? Because if they did, I forgot to.
Yeah, they even got 2 girls from the one before.
Yeah, we invited everybody back, just in case they wanted to, and I'm surprised anyone's gonna do it.
I did too, that's the first thing I thought.
We returned money to anybody that wanted their money returned, and then minus the expenditures, because we were
Right.
literally ready to have the ball.
Right.
And then we left it up to whatever was left, we would donate to Special Olympics. So most families donated.
Right.
You know, because the entrance fee is only like $300. So, I
Right.
mean, not only, but, you know, we'd already expended probably $200 of the DEB fee anyway.
Right.
So, by the time you have the mother-daughter tea and,
Yeah, I was surprised 2 girls were coming back.
yeah, I am too. Yeah, I think we have, I don't know, 22, maybe 21, 22?
Maybe 19, I think she said.
I think we got 2 more.
Wow.
I think we did. I think it's definitely above 20.
Good.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Griffin, are you feeling better?
A lot better.
Good.
A lot better. Thank you.
I was worried about you.
Hiccups.
Okay, we're gonna get started here.
The days.
Horrible.
And the knots.
Think about there are people that you see like on the news that have had them for like weeks and weeks.
I have
That's
one.
crazy.
I know, it is.
Oh.
Do I have to suspend rules?
I know, I turned it down to make it warmer in here.
702, 103 and 702.
Sorry, I have to invoke.
Invoke Council Rule 702. Okay, we'll get going here. Before we start, everybody in the gallery, make sure, check on your cell phones, make sure they're in silent mode.
I would start reaching down to turn it off when it rang.
Okay, this is a regular legislative meeting of the Barberton City Council. Today is Monday, July 12th, 2021. It is 7:05 PM. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation by Mrs. Colbert.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Heavenly Father, as we gather here this evening, we ask that you guide us in having a successful meeting by helping us struggle for solutions among differing personalities that can seem impossible, but thankfully we are not expected to be perfect. Lord, we ask you to watch over our first responders and those serving in the military, both here and abroad. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Why?
Mr. Devitt?
Here.
Mr. Heidick?
Here.
Mr. Greer?
Present.
Mrs. Angela?
Here.
Mr. Griffin?
Here.
Mr. Jaber?
Here.
Mrs. Coburn?
Here.
Mrs. Fry is absent.
Okay. Council Rule 103 states that regular and committee of the whole meetings shall be held at 7:30 PM. Since we are starting earlier than that, we need to invoke Council Rule 702. I have a motion, Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion that we invoke Council Rule 702.
Thank you, and Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to invoke 702, hopefully for the last time.
Okay. Well, a motion was made by Mrs. DeBevick and second by Mr. Heidick to invoke Council Rule 702 to suspend Council Rule 103. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Approval of the minutes of the regular legislative meeting. Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to make a motion for the approval of the minutes of the regular legislative meeting held on Monday, June 28th, 2021, as presented.
And Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to approve the minutes of the regular legislative meeting from Monday, June 28th, 2021.
Thank you. It was moved by Mrs. DeBevick and second by Mr. Heidick to approve the minutes of the regular legislative meeting held on Monday, June 28, 2021, as presented. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are adopted. Approval of the financial report for June 2021 as presented. Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to make a motion for the acceptance of the Finance Department report for the month of June 2021 as presented.
And who would be next? Mrs. Angela, would you like to second that?
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, I will second the acceptance of the finance report for the month of June 2021.
Thank you. It was moved by Mrs. Angeloff and second by it was moved by Mrs. DeBevick and second by Mrs. Angeloff to approve the financial report of the month of June 2021 as presented. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Financial report is adopted. Petitions and claims.
We have none.
Matters requested.
Nothing sent out in the packet.
Thank you. Citizens addressing council. I don't think there are any. Okay. First reading of ordinances and resolutions.
Ordinance number 89, 2021, presented by Mrs. Fry. Title, Appropriation CARES Act. An ordinance appropriating $899.97 from the unappropriated item of the local coronavirus relief fund to the operation and maintenance budget of the local coronavirus relief fund and declaring an emergency.
Motion to suspend, Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Are we standing
No.
or sitting? Okay, thank you.
That kind of defeats the purpose of those.
I know, I just was double checking.
Okay.
Thank you. I move that the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you, and Mrs. Angeloff.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second that motion for the suspension.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. DeBevick and second by Mrs. Angeloff to suspend the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mrs. Angeloff?
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn?
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick?
Yes.
Mr. Greer?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
And Mr. Jaber?
Yes.
Motion to adopt, Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 89, 2021.
Thank you, and Mrs. Angeloff.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second that motion to adopt.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. DeBevick and second by Mrs. Angeloff to adopt ordinance number 89, 2021. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mr. Jaber?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mr. Greer?
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick?
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn?
Yes.
Mrs. Angeloff?
Yes.
Resolution 90, 2021, presented by Mrs. DeBevick. Title, Commendation, Lieutenant Michael Beckman. A resolution of the Council of the City of Barberton to hone and give public recognition to Lieutenant Michael Beckman for receiving professional credentialing through the Center for Public Safety Excellence, CPSE, as a fire officer.
Excuse me. Motion to suspend, Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you, and Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. DeBevick's motion on suspension.
Thank you. The motion was made by Mrs. DeBevick and second by Mr. Greer to suspend the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Greer?
Yes.
Mrs. Angeloff?
Yes.
Mrs. Heidick? Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mr. Jaber?
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn?
Yes.
Motion to adopt, Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of resolution number 90, 2021.
Thank you, and Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. DeBevick's motion for adoption of resolution number 90-2021.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. DeBevick and second by Mr. Greer to adopt resolution number 90, 2021. Are there any remarks? Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to commend Lieutenant Michael Beckman for this accomplishment. I think Barberton should be very proud that only 22 fire officers received this honor. So I think this is a really worthy piece of legislation, and Barberton breeds the best. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mrs. Coburn?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin?
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick?
Yes.
Mr. Jaber?
Yes.
Mr. Heidick?
Yes.
Mrs. Angeloff?
Yes.
Mr. Greer?
Yes.
Ordinance number 91, 2021, presented by Mrs. Coburn. Title, Enter into Contract Vermeer, in ordinance authorizing the City of Barberton to enter into agreement with Vermeer, the lowest and/or best bidder, in the amount of $71,690 for the purchase of an excavator, and declaring an emergency.
Motion to suspend, Mrs. Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the rules as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter be suspended.
Thank you, and Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. Coburn's motion for suspension.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. Coburn and second by Mrs. DeBevick to suspend the rule as required by Section 5.10 of the Barberton City Charter. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Jaber,
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick,
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn,
Yes.
Mr. Heidick,
Yes.
Mr. Greer,
Yes.
Mrs. Angela,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
Motion to adopt. Mrs. Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for the adoption of ordinance number 91, 2021.
Thank you, and Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second Mrs. Coburn's motion for adoption.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. Coburn, second by Mrs. DeBevick to adopt ordinance number 91, 2021. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mrs. Angela,
Yes.
Mr. Greer,
Yes.
Mr. Heidick,
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn,
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick,
Yes.
Mr. Jaber.
Yes.
This ends the first readings.
Thank you. Second readings of ordinances and resolutions.
Ordinance number 86-2021, presented by Mrs. Angela. Title, Special Assessments, Demolitions, Board-ups, and Weed and Grass Cuttings. An ordinance authorizing and directing the Director of Finance of the City of Barberton to certify to the Summit County Auditor special assessments against certain properties located within the city for the cost of ordered demolitions, lien searches, emergency board-ups, environmental abatements, and weed grass cuttings, which took place from September 2020 through August 2021, and declaring an emergency. This ends the second reading.
Third readings of ordinances and resolutions.
Ordinance number 68-2021, presented by Mrs. Angela. Title, Zoning Map Amendment, Eastern Road, Fairland Road. An ordinance authorizing the rezoning of parcel 01.16060, an 11.26 acre parcel at the southwest corner of Eastern Road and Fairland Road from C3 Community Center Commercial to RS 50 Single Family Detached.
Motion to adopt. Mrs. Angela.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that ordinance number 68-2021 be adopted.
And Mrs. Coburn.
I second Mrs. Angeloff's motion for adoption.
Motion was made by Mrs. Angeloff and second by Mrs. Coburn to adopt ordinance number 68, 2021. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mr. Greer,
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn,
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick,
Yes.
Mrs. Angela,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Heidick,
Yes.
Mr. Jaber.
Yes.
Ordinance 89-2021, presented by Mrs. Angela. Title, Zoning Map.
69.
69.
69.
Title, Zoning Map Amendment, 635 Norton Avenue. An ordinance authorizing the rezoning of parcel 01.06960, 01.06961, 01.06962, and 01.06963. A 4.33 acre parcel at 635 Norton Avenue from C3 Community Center Commercial to I2 Medium Industrial.
Motion to adopt. Mrs. Angeloff.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that ordinance number 69-2021 be adopted.
Thank you. And Mrs. Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I second Mrs. Angeloff's motion for adoption.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. Angeloff and second by Mrs. Coburn to adopt ordinance number 69, 2021. Are there any remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mr. Heidick,
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn,
Yes.
Mrs. DeBevick,
Yes.
Mr. Greer,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mr. Jaber,
Yes.
Mrs. Angela.
Yes.
Ordinance 77-2021, presented by Mrs. Coburn. Title, enter into contract, CT Consultants, WWTP, Phases 3B and 3C. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into a professional engineering service contract with CT Consultants in an amount not to exceed $361,000 for bidding and construction administration services for the wastewater treatment plant WWTP Phases 3B and 3C project and declaring an emergency.
Motion to adopt, Mrs. Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that ordinance number 77, 2021 be adopted.
Thank you, and Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't want to second this. So is there someone else on the Utilities Committee? I mean, I'm going to vote yes, but I don't want to be the second.
Okay,
There,
Mrs. Fry's the other one.
I thought you were on Utilities. Are you not on Utilities too?
No.
No? I guess I will second the motion for adoption.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. Coburn and second by Mrs. DeBevick to adopt ordinance number 77, 2021. Are there any remarks?
Mr. President?
Yes.
I just wanted to thank Mr. Weaver for all the work and an honest mistake on this. And the no vote for the emergency to suspend the rules was just because we would have never had the conversations that we had if they would have been suspended and this would have went by the wayside. So I think we all learned from it and just, that's all I got to say.
Thank you. Any other remarks? Mr. Heidi.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, Director Weaver has done an amazing job. This was not anything involving him. In my opinion, it was CT Consultants does a lot of work for the city. I see a lot of their contracts come across here. They know our rules, and for them to get started before that, I think that was the breakdown of communication. Mr. Weaver has done an awesome job with the wastewater treatment plants, with the dam and everything, but in my opinion, CT jumped the gun on this one. So I'm prepared to vote yes now, but they know the rules, and they just, to me, they acted a little too quickly. Thank you.
Any other remarks? Clerk, please call the roll on adoption.
Mrs. DeBevick,
Yes.
Mr. Heidick,
Yes.
Mr. Griffin,
Yes.
Mrs. Angeloff,
Yes.
Mrs. Coburn,
yes.
Mr. Jaber,
Yes.
Mr. Greer.
Yes.
This ends the third reading.
Thank you. Appointments.
We have none.
Okay. Miscellaneous and unfinished business.
We have 3 liquor licenses. The first one was a new application from the West Theater Entertainment Center LLC, doing business as West Theater Bonnie's Eatery. It is a D2. They're located on 1017 Worcester Road West in Barberton, the old West Theater. I received no objections from anybody on that. We have a new one for Barberton Burgers LLC. It is a D1 and D2 license at 75 5th Street. That is the old Winks building. Again, no objections received from anybody. And the final one is a transfer to the Red, White, and Brews LLC, doing business as JWS Cheers. It is a D1, D2, D3, and D3A. And it is at 235 31st Street Southwest, and their patio, which is the Cheers they just sold. And it was the transfer from the old owners of Cheers, so JWS Cheers Incorporated, same address. Again, emails went out, no objections received on any of them.
Thank you. Okay, adoption of changes to the rules governing the council of the city of Barberton. First change to read as follows.
Okay. Section 1, organization and setup, Rule 103, meeting times will read as follows. The hour of the regular and committee of the whole meetings shall be at the conclusion of the individual committee meetings. The presiding officer may delay the start of the meeting if necessary or allow for a scheduled public hearing.
Okay, Mr. Griffin.
I move to adopt this resolution, rule change 103.
Okay.
Okay.
And Mr. Height?
I will second the chairman's motion to
Thank-
adopt this.
Thank you. It was moved by Mr. Griffin and second by Mr. Heidi to approve the change of the Rule 103 meeting time as presented. Are there any remarks? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Rule changes are adopted. Second change to read as follows.
Section 2, Order. Rule 205, Recognition to Speak, Regular Meeting, will read, when a member desires to speak at a regular meeting, such member shall raise his or her hand and wait to be recognized by the presiding officer. While a member is speaking, no person shall interrupt except with the permission of that member. No member shall speak more than twice on any question or longer than 5 minutes each time without the consent of the presiding officer.
And Mr. Griffin?
Thank you, Mr. President. I make a motion to change the rule 205 to recognition to speak during a regular meeting.
Thank you. And Mr. Heidi?
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second that motion to change the rule for recognition to speak.
Thank you. It was moved by Mr. Griffin and second by Mr. Heidi to approve the change to Rule 205, recognition to speak, regular meeting as presented. Are there any remarks? Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to clarify for the public that may not have this in front of them, that this change is just striking out the rule to stand while speaking. That's all I got. Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor, anybody else? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Rule change is adopted. Communications from the mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I'd like to congratulate Lieutenant Beckman on his achievement through the Center of Public Safety Excellence. This is a huge achievement, not only for him, but for the entire Barberton community, so I want to congratulate him on that. As it boils down to COVID, a lot of the organizations and different government levels that we work with, the state, the county, they're not tracking the same stats that they were before, and I kind of mentioned that previously. But the Delta variant we've seen in the news, and that's really become a kind of a subject that's moving forward. So we'll continue to track as much data that we can get our hands on. We're still working with everyone at the county and the state and our federal representatives as well. But this is one that the CDC and World Health Organization and others are taking very, very seriously. We've seen a lot of variants throughout this past year and a half, approximately, all different names and different uniqueness, if you will. But this is one that's kind of caught the attention of a lot of organizations, so we'll keep an eye on that. Continuing with Christmas in July, benefiting Salvation Army in Backham. Donations can be made at the city building, in my office, at the YMCA, Lake Anna YMCA, or our Parks Department. With the recent rains, drove around yesterday, comes down hard, it comes down fast. I'm kind of surprised they didn't close the highways because it was, traffic was down to about 20 miles an hour. Talked to some business owners and employees up in even the Fairlawn area, and some of their buildings up there had leaks, including Giant Eagle and some of the other big buildings up in that area. So I think we had to close one road that I'm aware of. Other than that, the water came down and very fast, very quick, but went away very quickly too. So always concerned of not what falls on Barberton so much, but what comes down through the tributaries, an hour to a couple days after that. So with the forecast of additional rains throughout the entire week, and that forecast continues to change very, very frequently, almost by the hour, we're keeping an eye on everything, charting everything we can, working with USGS, Ohio Department of Natural Resources, Muskegon Watershed, all these different organizations on that front as well. So if you have any questions, please give us a call. Want to share this. This came in the other day. As you may recall, we applied to be a All-American City, and so we were a finalist, one of the top 20 in the country. They whittled that down to the top 10. We did not make that, but we were in the top 20 in the country. The only one in Ohio that made it that far. And other communities like Dallas, Texas, made it as far as we did. So a great honor, even though we didn't make it all the way to the top 10, but still a great honor on the different things that we're doing here in the community for our residents, and very proud of that. So want to share that. Also, a little recognition and appreciation and partnership with the Barberton City Schools on, helping them and sponsoring them and just really being there to partner with them in their Do Your Job initiative. In a community like Barberton, if you can get the kids young and get them the tools that they need to be productive citizens, that's going to help the entire community, not just today, but moving forward. So, if you think back at your own lives, what would have happened if you didn't have that one person, that teacher, that mentor, that coach, whoever, whether it was at the city, the schools, or a youth program that didn't help you out? Where would you be? I'm sure we could all point to someone in our lives, or a few people in our lives who, maybe you got a swift kick in the pants at a certain time, or maybe you were led some different words of wisdom, and maybe that helped set the course for your life. So, we got a great relationship with the Barberton City Schools, and it's nice to be honored by them. But we're going to continue with this relationship, and I think that we're all going to be better off with the programs that we work in collaboration with. So I wanted to let you know that they did send that over. Other than that, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mayor. Anything else from the body? Okay, Mr. Griffin.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. I would like to personally thank everybody in the city of Barberton that contacted me. I never knew I had so many people that were noticing and that I was missing. And I want to thank council and Lori, and I know Mrs. Fry brought lunch over for me, and we stretched it into lunch and dinner. So that was really great, because I don't eat that much. But anyway, I just want to thank everybody for the outpouring of affection. I got phone calls from people that, I didn't see your grass cut. They're like, something's wrong. They were calling me, what's wrong? What's wrong? His grass isn't cut. Something's wrong with him. But people notice a lot, and I really do appreciate it. And it goes a long way. So I want to thank everyone.
And thank you. Mrs. Cole.
I want to remind everyone that they're having the, what do they call that thing? Poker run for Backham is this Saturday, and the Relay for Life is this Saturday on Tusk. And we're still accepting canned goods to hold the bags down at both Ignite and at Coburn's Quilting.
Okay, thank
It's going to be
you.
a full day.
Anyone else? Okay, do I have a motion to excuse Mrs. Fry from tonight's meeting? Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I make a motion that we excuse Mrs. Fry from tonight's meeting.
Okay. And Mr. Hyde.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion to excuse Counselor Fryer from tonight.
Thank you. Motion was made by Mrs. DeBevick and second by Mr. Heidick. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mrs. Fry is excused. Okay, with nothing else, do I have a motion to adjourn? Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Thank you, and Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will second the motion on adjournment.
Thank you. It was moved by Mrs. DeBevick and second by Mr. Heidick that we adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned at 7:33.
We wouldn't even be started yet. We wouldn't even be started in council yet.
Okay, I will. Drive there.
roll right into.
No problem. I know, I just think it's terrible.
At least you
No, I'm sorry.
arguments. Some of the people that I've read have some of the most asinine things I've ever heard. But then again, well, I have stepkids, but I was gonna say, I have stepkids.
What's up? And I've been so many projects and over to
Wait, when?
Oh, thank you.
It just seemed easier since I knew there was nothing.
No.
And then I didn't have to call to my office at the time, so instead of the gavel, I got the had this time.
Did you ever find his?
Yes.
Oh,
I
okay.
did. So,
I thought we were gonna have to
I
use it.
appreciate it. And I can appreciate your feelings.
I mean,
I hated to bring it forward, you know, when I found.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah.
What's that?
Yeah.
Birthday drinks?
Thank you.
Well, hey,
Remind me of drink.
Very necessary.
no,
Well, no, I was thinking,
I wanna have my.
like I said, Sunday evening,
No.
just hang